Good morning, my name is Sierra Walker, and I'll be explaining in my informative essay, The Lalaurie Mansion, House of Horrors. Delphine Lalaurie was a woman known for some of the most egregious of cases. Delphine Lalaurie's mansion would later go down in history as one of the most horrific sites of slave torture. While she was an evil woman, nothing compared to the terrible acts performed at her place of dwelling. Her place garnered a lot of notoriety for some of the most obscene and evil records ever indicated, and its horrific sights. I plan to inform you of those hideous sights, those hideous acts, and explain a brief history of why all should shudder at the mere mention of the Lalaurie Mansion. I have a picture of Delphine Lalaurie, also known as Marie Delphine McCarty. She was born on March 19, 1787, to a wealthy family in New Orleans. She was married 3 times due to her first 2 husbands passing away. Records show that 8 of the enslaved people she owned, due to her second late husband, had died in about 5 years span. They ranged in age of children to women of childbearing age, with the cause of their death always being unknown. The 40-year-old Delphine was now with her 3rd husband at this time. Some letters were confiscated, and it was found out to be that they were having a very hard time in their marriage. This also began to show some of the cruelty to her slaves in these letters. In 1831, Madame Delphine Lalaurie purchased some property at the Royal Inn Hospital, which would now become the infamous Lalaurie Mansion. 5 months later, her husband, Dr. Lalaurie, would end up leaving the site and acquiring a new residence in Clackamas Parish after reported trouble in their marriage. Lalaurie was known as a well-known sadist and was known for also torturing her slaves. In 1833, Delphine chased a small enslaved girl with a whip until the girl fell off the top of her roof and died. Now, Lalaurie tried to cover up this incident, but police found her body hidden in a well. Now, this caused them to make her sell all her slaves, but in actuality, Delphine Lalaurie decided to sell all her slaves to her family members and then got them right back. Accounts of Delphine Lalaurie's treatment of her slaves began in 1831 and 1834, and they're mixed. Some noting that she was extremely horrid to her slaves and practiced in dismemberment, also painting blood on the faces of some of her relatives and friends to aid in the fact of keeping their skin good, due to the fact that she felt like a lot of the slaves had good skin. We also see that due to the skewed perception, I think, of the treatment of this, due to the skewed perception of how the times were back then, some people felt like she was horrendous, but then others felt like she was normal and it was just regular behavior at the time. Harriet Martineau, writing in 1838 and recounting tales told to her by the New Orleans residents during her 1836 visit, claimed Lalaurie's slaves were observed to be singularly haggard and wretched. However, in public appearances, Lalaurie was seen to be very polite to people of color and solicitous of her slaves' health. And I honestly think this was done just to keep up her appearance as not being so bad to them, especially when, in retrospect, she was extremely evil to her slaves in her own home. Although I think this was done as a mask to what she was which was happening behind closed doors, I feel like she went out about and seemed to be polite to people of color because she didn't want to be seen in her house that she was doing such deeds that, when they finally got out, were considered horrendous, and even to the people of that time. Funeral registers between 1830 and 1834 document the deaths of 12 slaves at the Royal Street Mansion, although the cause of the death are not mentioned. And honestly, I think this is due to, as again, the times, them not really caring, and them not really seeing them as people at this time. On April 10th, 1834, a fire at the Lalaurie Mansion in New Orleans, Louisiana, leads to the discovery of the brutal torture chamber. The woman who started the fire was later revealed to be the chef at the Lalaurie Mansion. She got tired of the treatment and she decided to do something about it. And in doing so, further inspection of the house revealed that 7 slaves were found tied with spiked iron collars. These 7 were rescued in the most deplorable conditions. Their bodies were covered with scars and loaded with chains. They were taken out on stretchers and delivered to safety at the Caballito, while a mob proceeded to destroy the furnishings of the home in outrage. Some of the witnesses from the mob detailed seeing as they stormed at the mansion horribly mutilated slaves, with some suspended by the neck and their extremities stretched and torn. In my PowerPoint, I explained some of the treatments toward the slaves. This is a common picture actually, and can actually be said to be a pretty good depiction of how the slaves were treated. And this is a picture of her house before it got burned down. While a mob proceeded to destroy the furnishings in her home, some of the witnesses saw that the slaves were horribly mutilated, with some suspended by their necks. A Judge Canonage, a friend of the Lalauries and part of the mob, told another judge when he arrived he was surprised by being in one of the apartments some slaves who were chained and were exposed to perish in the conflagration. Judge Canonage, accompanied by a few other citizens, discovered 2 African-American incarcerated whom they liberated. One was wearing an iron collar, very large and heavy, and was chained with heavy irons by the feet and walked with the greatest difficulty. These are some of the actual annotations from people who were there during the mob. Now, this was given to me by GhostCityTours.com and History.com. During this time, she and her husband fled by boat, leaving the butler who had participated in the torture to face the wrath of the crowd. She escaped on a boat and fled with her husband, Dr. Lalaurie. Most who knew Delphine never probably could have imagined the horrors that were just below their feet. Even though this was a time of anti-slavery and of anti-slaves and a line. Even though this was a time of anti-slavery, I feel like there was a line that was crossed in terms of morality, and many of those in the mob turned their concern for her burning house into outrage at the horrendous sights of the treatment of the slaves. So I feel like at this point in time, they kind of went from, we understand that this is that slavery is okay, and we have normalized slavery, but this is beyond our spectrum of morality. And at this point, we're angry because they went from trying to help her save her burning house to destroying her burning house and freeing the slaves, which at this time I feel like was something that you usually probably wouldn't see. But due to such the conditions of the slaves, it happened. Now, while she was not punished due to her flee the country for her gruesome acts, her family name was tarnished, and I feel like a lesson was learned that day. I feel like the lesson that truly was learned is that evil is in the world, and sometimes it walks among us. Thank you. This has been my presentation, and have a great day.